Hi everyone, this is Elena Kraus and welcome to another card video. In this video I'm featuring some of the new Spellbinders dies, the Nestabilities Essential Squares along with the Coordinating Essentials Glimmer Squares and the Bold Type Thank You die and some older stamp set, Spring Botanicals set and the Coordinating die. So let's get started. Here I have all the products that I'll be using in today's videos for the dies and the stamps. I'm using the largest square from the Glimmer squares, and it's like kind of dotted square. And I'm using light gray Pebble cardstock. So I have preheated my Glimmer machine, and I've added the plate. I'm cutting coordinating size of silver foil, and just press the button there to heat that up. And once stops blinking, we can put the cardstock on top, the two plates, and run it to the die cutting machine. I'm using the Spellbinders Platinum 8 machine, which is not in this video, it's on the side because I could not fit it in the screen. So I took that out, ran it to the die cutting machine, and here is the result. So I'll keep doing, I'm doing multiple cards at once to have to send to friends during this crazy time with everything that's going on. So while that's heating up, while the second plate is heating up, I'm gonna die cut the larger thank you die, the background from silver shimmer cardstock, glitter cardstock. So we have Magic at YouTube that's already die cut. I'm just removing the extra pieces from there, and the Glimmer plate is already heated up. Just gonna add the cardstock and the plates, run it to my die cutting machine, and that's done. I'm making another one. I'm just positioning that foil to cover the entire plate, pressing the button, and meantime while that heats, I'm using now the essential squares, the largest die, which is 4x4, to die cut the squares. So I've already die cut one. I run the last piece of the dotted squares through the die cutting machine to foil it, and next I'll be using the sentiments. This is again another new product that was recently released, and I'm using Just Because, very big thank you, and my thoughts are with you, or something like that. I can't remember, but we'll see just a second. So while that's heating up, I die cut the thank you from pink cardstock from Peony cardstock, and I'm just layering on top of the Glimmer glitter paper to see how and I think that looks pretty nice. So now that's heat set, again I use silver foil and I use that Peony cardstock so it all matches up. I'm doing another set. I'm making 4 cards at once, so we'll need 2, and while that's heating up, again I'm kind of multitasking here. I'm die cutting the squares. Now I run that through the die cutting machine and I turn it off, and we have pretty much everything die cut. Now we're going to move on to stamping. I'm using the Spring Botanical stamp set. I'm taking out that large flower and some of the foliage, and I'm using bubblegum ink that's very close to the Peony cardstock. I'm using my MISTI to stamp a bunch of those flowers. I'm stamping twice to have kind of darker and more detailed impression. So since those are foam mount, they're rubber but foam mount stamps, I remove the pad from the MISTI, so I'm stamping directly on the backing of it without the pad. The pad is for clear stamps. I'm going to stamp several flowers. I'm making 4. I ended up stamping 6. So once I was done with the flowers, I moved on to the foliage. We're just going to use one of those foliages that comes with the coordinating die, but I stamp a bunch for future use. Again, I'm stamping a couple of times, and I'm going to repeat the process several times. I'm going to use 2 of the ones that are on the bottom left for the card, so we need at least 8. So next I'm pulling out the coordinating dies, the ones that I need, the large flower and the largest foliage. The other pieces of the foliage, they don't have coordinating dies. You will either need to stamp directly on your card or fussy cut it. So we have everything cut. I trimmed the sentiments, and now it's time to assemble our cards. I'm gonna have 2 cards that says just because, actually 1 card that says just because, 1 thank you, and 2 that says you're in my thoughts. So I'm just trying to figure out where I want to put the sentiments. And then I trimmed that a very big thank you. I just trimmed a very big, and I put the thank you aside for a future use, and since I'm using the bold thank you die. So next we'll just move to creating the card bases. I'm making square cards, and my card bases are 4.5 by 4.5. I use the A2 cardstock, the 8.5 letter size cardstock, and I cut it to 4.25 by 8.5, and then I'm just scoring it at 4.25 to give us 4.25 note cards. So next I'll use not fun foam, but I'm gonna use mounting foam tape to adhere the flower, and I'll use foam squares that have they're a little bit thinner than the foam tape to adhere the leaves, so it gives us different dimensions or different amount of rays of those elements onto the card. Just trim the ends since I have the foam tape underneath. I had to trim those so we can tuck them in. Just adding smaller squares there to hold those leaves nice and flat. Next we're gonna adhere the 2 layers of the thank you sentiment. I'm using liquid adhesive for this, strong liquid adhesive. Just gonna put acrylic block on top to keep it flat while it dries. I'm gonna do the same with the U. So next I'm cutting very thin strip of foam tape for that a really big sentiment. Next I'm gonna cut little pieces of foam tape to adhere the thank you. I'm just gonna add it on the back of the letters. I'm gonna leave the T because the T kind of goes over the leaves and the flower, so we want equal we want the entire sentiment to be equally raised instead of having a bumpy sentiment. Removing the backing here, and I'll adhere it to the card. And then I'll do the same with you. I won't add the foam tape on the first part of the Y, since that part of the Y goes over the flower that's already popped up onto foam tape. Next I'm adding some foam on the back and adhering it to one of the note cards. So I'm just adding some of that liquid adhesive under the T and the Y. I'm going to repeat the process for the next 3 cards. Now I'm using that the foam squares to adhere the leaves. Those are like the thinner foam squares, thinner than the foam tape. I'll adhere the foam tape directly onto my card, remove it, and then adhere the flower. And I'll use again the thinner foam squares to adhere the sentiment. So it's equal, the raise is equal for both the leaves and the sentiment. So where the sentiment goes over the leaves, I did not add the foam squares on the back. Just trimming off the excess. Just gonna straighten up that a little bit. Let's move to the next one. This one is just because, and I'm adhering that strip directly onto my panel. Next I'll add the foliage and the flowers. Again, I'm using 2 different heights of the foam squares and the foam mounting tape. And as the previous, I'm adding that foam tape directly onto the panel. That's done, and next we're going with the You're in My Thoughts again. So for this one, adhere the foliage with liquid adhesive directly onto the panel, no dimensionals added. I'm cutting a thin strip for the sentiment. Now it goes over the entire length of the sentiment because we have a flat surface underneath. The leaves are not popped up on foam tape. I'm adding foam tape on back of the flower. Once it's done, I'll trim the ends of the sentiment. Now we can pull up out different more pieces of that fun foam. And I like having kind of more dimension on my card, so I use fun foam to pop up one of the layers. You can totally omit this layer, this step, and adhere directly onto your note card. But I feel like it gives more dimension and more interest. So we're doing the last one here. Again, I'm using liquid adhesive, gives me more time to move it around and make sure that it's nice and straight. So now we're moving to the last step, is to add a little bit of kind of some embellishments, and I'm adding some jewels. I already added dots of liquid adhesive. Make sure that you use a strong liquid adhesive so they don't fall out when you try to mail these cards. So I'm just adding again dots and picking up the jewels and adding it right into the dots. The adhesive I used dries clear, so I'll give it some time to dry and then you will see that that white spots are gone. We're doing the last and final card. So let's take another close look to the cards that we made today. Usually when I do one card, I end up stamping a bunch of sentiments so I can make multiples like we did here. And that's it for today. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to click on that subscribe button to subscribe to my YouTube channel so you get notifications for any future videos and inspiration. Also, visit my blog for more ideas and inspiration. Thanks for watching. Bye!